Good evening, and welcome to Awakening Wednesday. I am very happy to be here with you this evening in this lovely chilliness as we join in to open our heart, to expand our consciousness, and to be available to learn, to grow. And so with that being said, as we always start off our Wednesdays with prayer, let's just take this moment and breathe into this divine space. This is the absolute space of spirit. It is the indwelling presence that is right here and right now. And so this light, this lighthouse of love that is calling us forth to open our hearts, to expand what we think we know, and to embrace this new awareness of loving all of our brothers and sisters. It is with that divine love in space, with that love, that we join in this divine moment right now. giving thanks for this time and praise. So as we breathe into that, breathing into the awareness that all that there is the absolute. And in the absolute, there's constant change. Things are absolutely in emotion. So we're going to switch things up a little bit. Normally I would do a song here, but we'll hold that till later. And let me introduce me. My name is Gino Walker. I am the musical director here at Universal Spirit Center. And I am. I'm a joyous light. And tonight we have with us one of our very own, our divine treasurer, a member of Universal Spirit Center for a very long time. This divine light has given love and light to this community in so many ways. So let's open our hearts, let's open our mind, and bring forth Annette Ridenour. Come on in, Annette. Have a sit down. Yes, okay, so let's bring this and make sure that's close to you there. All right, Annette, so tonight we are talking about being Jewish in America. There's so many questions I have, but one of the most important, as you expressed to me, is being able to express your story of what it was like for you. So we'll start there. What was it like, or what is it like, being Jewish in America?
Well, thank you, Gino, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and share my story with, fellow members of Universal Spirit Center and whoever else is out there listening today. It's a story that starts very young. I was born Jewish and today consider myself a Jew, and I'll explain that.
Okay, please.
I grew up in New York City and in a tightly knit family and very, very value-driven. It was a fairly Orthodox Sephardic family, so we were pretty religious, and what was taught to me from a very young age is that you are a Jew, you live in a family that is Jewish, you stay within the family, your friends are within the Jewish community, and that you marry within the Jewish community and you continue the legacy with creating a Jewish family.
Oh.
And so that was ingrained in me from a very, very young age.
Okay. So I'm just going to say that seems like that's very inclusive. It creates this very tight-knit community.
Very much so. So weekends was spent with my aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins. So it was very, very tight-knit. The friends I had in school were mostly Jewish. The people I was allowed to play with was mostly Jewish.
Wow.
So it was a very protected environment until I was about 12 years old. And it was a very happy childhood.
Okay.
It was a happy childhood, and I didn't know any better. I had lots of love. I didn't ever think about Christmas because we had Hanukkah, and Hanukkah had like 8 days of presents.
Yeah.
And so why would you want Christmas when you had one day, right?
Exactly. As a kid, it's a cornucopia of good.
Exactly. So it wasn't a situation where I grew up envying anybody else. It was just what was, and it was very protected. And then it all shifted. When I was about 13 years old, my parents allowed me to go to a summer camp. We lived in the city, and so summertime, we would go to the Catskills, or we would go to Rockaway for summer vacations. But I always wanted to go to camp, and so I had a chance of going to a camp, and they let me go to a camp that was full of Negroes and Spanish,
Negroes.
African American, sorry.
But no, at that time, I'm
at
sure
that
we were
time.
called Negroes.
Exactly. I mean, that's what it was at that time. There was no African American.
No,
no one said that.
we were either probably black then or Negroes, but I think
Exactly.
Negroes was
Right.
probably, we've had many, many names,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yes.
yeah. And so my parents didn't know, and all of a sudden, I was exposed to multiculturalism and love and difference, and my world was turned upside down.
Well, let me ask you this, because I was going to get to that. Being in this environment where, I mean, it was Jewish, and maybe some white. So, and even being in New York, now you go to this camp, it's probably Negroes, Puerto Ricans, maybe, Hispanics. Were you frightened? I mean, were there stories that you had heard that you're like,
I think I was just in awe of being away from home in the country, and it was a time of folk singing and causes, and I just got totally wrapped up into a whole new world. I don't think there was fear.
okay.
I know that fear was ingrained in me by my parents.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
And the fear was that of anti-Semitism. So that was the fear. Not that I should be afraid of them, but of the anti-Semitism.
So the fear was that they would hate you.
Exactly.
And not having understanding for you. I have to say, one of the things about children, for the most part, when we're little ones, the play, the fun of what's unfolding takes place, and the color. I remember I was traveling down south, and I met this little girl that I was completely clear that she had never, ever seen someone of color in person. So she stood across the room and watched me like a hawk. And I was one of maybe 3 people of color there. And I'm going to say I probably was the darkest skin of the ones there. And so she was standing across the way. She was just, I mean, every time I looked up, her eyes were just glued to me. And I was in the restroom, and she and her mom came in the bathroom, and they did not know I was in there. And I'll never forget, she asked her mother, how did they get the color on that woman, Mommy? How did she get that color on her? And will it ever come off? And it's just amazing. So I'm sure there were a lot of questions when you go to this camp, and all of these different type of people and kids and languages. Did everybody speak English?
Yes, everybody spoke English, and I grew up in New York City, which is the melting pot.
Yes.
So, being in New York City, of course I had seen African Americans and Puerto Ricans and the whole, Iranians, and every single nationality is in New York City, but we stayed to our own.
Yes, yes.
And since the whole subject of anti-Semitism was taught to us from age 5. My father fought in World War II, all my uncles did, and my relatives, many of them died in Auschwitz. And I had one surviving great aunt who came back.
Oh, did she have the number? Yeah.
Who told the story of what it was like to be in a concentration camp. So these stories of the Holocaust, were just a part of growing up.
Right, right. I have to say that the Jewish culture, the Jewish community, with all of the atrocities, one of the things that I've always admired was that you were able to keep bits and pieces of your culture, that the families were able to pass down stories, and after some of the wars, some of the families were even able to track down paintings and heirlooms and things of the family that had been taken. And I think that helped create this stronger environment of appreciating who you are and where you've come from. So you come back from camp. What do you tell your parents? What is that conversation? Or your best friend? What is that conversation?
That I became a new person and I wanted to hang out with a multicultural group of kids. I wanted to go down to the village and I wanted to do folk dancing and I wanted to play the guitar and perhaps learn about protest marches, and they were furious, absolutely furious. And at that point, I realized that I was separate from my family. And that, what that whole experience did is it opened me up to a wider world and compassion and caring, and that I needed to care, about the whole world, not just what was going on in my nuclear family.
Right. Well, now, what about your siblings? Where were they when you were having this? Because they're experiencing it as well. What did they feel?
My brother was older, and he had his own form of rebellion.
Okay.
He went to Hebrew school and was bar mitzvahed, but it was not a good experience for him.
Okay.
And so neither he or I grew up loving the religion. Being in a Sephardic family, the synagogue had the men in the center, and the women were upstairs behind curtains.
Oh, wow.
And so the women weren't allowed to learn the Torah. They were expected to be housewives or at most teachers.
And you couldn't sing, correct? The
Oh,
women
no.
couldn't sing.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's, I mean, we all are evolving, and it's just amazing when you hear the journey that we've had to go through and that women, again, have to go through to be able to be in this place on earth. So your family, I know, was like, you have lost your mind. And a lot of times when that happens with families, I have found that they go for the fear. They reach for the fear tool to try and distract you with fear. What were their comments to you?
It was really, you will
This
not,
is G-rated.
you shall not, you cannot, this is impossible, you live the way we tell you to live, or you don't live under our roof.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That had to shake you up.
It did, it did. And so I left pretty young. I mean,
Really?
yeah, it was before, just about 16, yeah.
Oh my goodness. And so, what did you go to school? Did you go with neighbors or friends? What? 16? You're still in school. What did you do?
Oh no, I had actually graduated from high school. I was one of these really smart kids.
You were smarty
I was
pants.
a smart kid, but skipped a bunch of grades, and so I was pretty smart. So, but it was rough. I moved into a place with 4 other girls, and it broke my mother's heart. But my father was being firm, and
Father had the final say so.
But, looking back at it now, they loved me. They were doing the best that they could. They were doing the best that they knew. I mean, for hundreds, thousands of years, Jews have lived in these tight-knit little communities and had survived because of that.
Yes.
But this was the 60s.
Bell bottoms and love was happening.
Exactly, exactly. So it was also, it pushed me on my spiritual journey. So the other important part, which I'm grateful for my parents, I'm grateful for my upbringing, is I loved God. From the very, very beginning, I always felt like God was inside of me. And I prayed, and I just wanted to have a closer relationship with God. And during those teenage years, Judaism wasn't giving it to me because I didn't have, the right teachers.
Were women seen kind of like as second-class citizens in the teaching?
Women, oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, that would You know, if you're a woman that you were brilliant, so you wanted to participate in life, you wanted your voice to be heard. That didn't really support that. So it's kind of like I was raised Catholic, and I knew I was in trouble when I couldn't be an altar girl. And I was like, what, really, what's happening? Why? And it's like, that's for boys. You could be a nun. I didn't want to be a nun. I was like, I don't want to be a nun. I want to be an altar. I was calling it an altar boy. But it just shows how, in all different walks of life, how women have been put into some box.
And I felt that the way I was raised, or what I was raised to be, not how I was raised, but what I was raised to be, and the Judaism that was presented to me did not support me as a full woman, a woman who would be a professional, a woman who would make her way in the world.
Of course, because, you were raised to have a man take care of you. And now, for Jewish men, was that attractive to them? I mean, were they like, she's troublemaker?
So I'd say during the 60s, I was also felt I was very different going to college because I was a chemistry major. And I was the only female chemistry major in my class.
Wow. And now, how old were you when you were in college?
I entered at 17.
Yeah, so you were young.
Yeah, and I was out by 20, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you were brilliant.
So I wouldn't say brilliant, I was motivated.
I give you brilliant.
But just to talk about Judaism, it's in my bones, okay? And so I was never able to totally reject the culture because I saw, the love.
Okay.
Lots of love from family and beautiful values.
Okay.
It was always respect other people, the do unto others as you want them to do unto you. The respect of education. There was so much about, the Jewish holidays, the family. So it was really, it always sort of was inside me dormant, in terms of being a Jewish person.
Well, it was something you could always relate to. That was a foundation that no matter what was always there for you. And I would imagine, at 16, 17, this red-haired hippie with a lot of opinions that at that time, too, even in a spiritual quest, I would imagine it would have been kind of hard to find a spiritual teaching that really supported you as a woman, you as a spiritual being. One of the things that used to drive me crazy was, why do I have to have a third person? Why do I have to talk to the priest to talk to God? I was like, what? Why can't I have my own? Why can't I have my own connection? And for me, the whole devil thing never made sense. I never understood that if God is all that there is, how could anything be opposed to it? Not opposed to it, but challenge it. I just never understood that. I got a 3-day suspension because I didn't I didn't get it. But so you're still in New York, you have roommates, you're 17, you're in college. Are you attracted to Jewish men? Are you starting to look at other men, other nationalities and cultures?
Other nationalities and cultures, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I dated and had relationships with almost anyone other than Jewish men. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, did you find that? Because in a lot of the cultures, it was a man's world. But I would imagine that, in college you always got some new thinkers. people that were on the edge and very eager to meet a woman that had thoughts and of their own, that it wasn't whatever he said, that you just...
Absolutely. It was the time of debate. It was, the time of the Vietnam War. It was the time of marching with Martin Luther King. So, my life was very full of activities and people and causes. And, but eventually I decided that I needed to be an artist. So I did this flip-flop and decided that art was my calling. And I guess my relationship to spirituality it's been really through my life in terms I have these, I wouldn't say voices, but I have these strong intuitions that I wind up believing that this is the right path for me. So I think my spiritual life and has allowed me to go on the path of continuous learning and searching with a knowing that I was following my spiritual path that was God-informed.
I love that. So at this time, did you still participate in Jewish holidays? Or did you just kind of totally take a step back? Were you Annette, a Jewish woman, or were you just Annette? You mentioned Martin Luther King. Did you march?
Absolutely.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
what was that like?
It was very empowering, and really one of the biggest fights that I had with my father is, I had some friends that I had met at camp, and they were marching on Washington, invited me to go, and I told my parents that I was going to Connecticut to spend the weekend with my girlfriend, and but I went with my girlfriend and her parents to march.
Oh wow!
And wound up being on the front page of the New York Times. And and so that's
you
how
couldn't
my
deny
parents
that one.
couldn't deny that one, right?
Wow! Did you keep that picture?
I didn't keep that picture. I should have. Yeah.
Well, you never know with archives. Something to think about. So your dad gets
this big on it. But, it's not. I mean, it was about this big in the crowd.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. But he saw you. What does the family say to you? What?
I was just the odd man out in the family. They all talked about me and, poor Annette, is she ever going to come back to the fold? And, my mother used to sneak me money and I would, see her more or less, but my father was being very stubborn. And years went by and I really felt like I needed to make peace with my father.
Okay.
So I was working as a potter at that particular point in time. I became a professional potter, and I met a man, and he happened to be Jewish. And so I felt, well, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. And so as soon as I told my parents I was dating a Jewish man, they had me engaged, And, and the blessing of that was I did develop a new relationship with my parents, as a married woman and as a mother. And we then they moved to California, and we participated in Jewish life together, I'd say in my 20s.
Okay, all right. So so that was a full 360 turn for you. So now you're going to the synagogue, you're fully invested. How was your heart feeling at that time? Where was your space in that?
I felt like the rabbi. It's all about it's always about the rabbi or the minister. So the rabbi that I had found, it was at Temple Beth El in La Jolla, was a brilliant student of world religions, and so it was more as of a conservative synagogue that was more accepting and allowing. So it didn't have the same pressures as the synagogue that I grew up in.
Well, then time had changed too.
Exactly.
To keep in the fold, time had changed. You know, I before we run out of time, I definitely want to touch on how right now
Exactly.
the intense hatred that is coming from everywhere. I have to say that there's so much that I don't understand, and then also when people are comparing racism, it's like this is a worse racism than that. It's like all of it is hatred. And the fact that this rise in Jewish hatred again is really on the front page. What does that do to your sensibility of looking at this marker of where you've come from and where we are now?
Listening to the news and hearing all the hate that is being espoused in the news towards Judaism, it breaks my heart. But there are so many things that break my heart. It's not the ultimate hatred in the world right now. It's just another hatred. It's another way that the world is divisive. Many years, about 15 years ago, I went to Israel, and on that trip, I went to a beautiful museum in Tel Aviv, which is, it's the Museum of Diaspora, and it tells the story of 2,500 years of not discrimination, but the persecution and trying to eliminate the race.
Yes.
You know, I think what's different about Judaism is how long and how many times this has happened to the Jews. You know, 2,500 years, you know, going back to the Roman and Greek time and in the Middle Ages, you know, so there's been ways and of trying to eliminate the Jews so many times. But today I'm a different person. You know, my roots in spiritual teachings teach me not to hate all the people who are hating the Jews. So yes, I'm angry about it, and I want more people to understand, and I want more awareness, but with that, I want to spread more love, because we're not going to get rid of the hate, all the hate that is going on, without being able to counteract it with love.
I absolutely understand that and recognize that as I take this walk towards equality, diversity, and inclusion, that my heart has to be one of love. And sometimes it gets difficult because there are still times that I can go to a store and somebody's following me around the store, or my bag will get checked just because. And so the things that are out there in the media, all the hate, there's a part of it that I understand that this bubbling up of hate has to come up so that we can heal it. But the only way that it can be healed is divine lights like yourself, that you must stand in a space of love and teach from love. Even when people ask some of the most insane questions. And I tell people the politically correct, I think, is a travesty, because it stops people from asking what's on their heart, what's on their mind. And if I can keep my heart space open to answer any question, then it allows people to peek into and see. And so when, I'll just speak it, Kanye West was talking about the Jewish community. At first, I really didn't get why it was anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism. Me and that word, I practice. It kind of reminded me of when people say all black people have rhythm. I thought, oh, it's a stereotype. But as I started to read and understand that the religious aspect of what's unfolding, that has this platform that has been laid that says that this is the Jewish culture, and it's a hateful remarks of challenging the community of knowledge and wisdom and drive and creativity that, as you said, has lasted for centuries. And so I knew that when he was talking about anybody from a space that wasn't recognizing the beauty and love, I didn't fully understand where the hatred came in. And I didn't get, while he was saying, I'm going to go 3D on the Jewish community, I was like, what have they done to you? What? But it shows again that we can be so misled in an instant with hatred. It's so easy to follow hate than it is love. So I don't know if you heard some of the things that Kanye West said.
Oh, I did, absolutely, and despicable. But on the other hand, when people say things like that, this hatred comes from a place of fear.
Yes.
So, it must come from a deep place of fear that there's different, and different is wrong, and you should, and it has to be afraid. You should be afraid because
Yes.
they're different.
Yeah.
And whatever we can do in the world, to teach that we are all one, that's where we have to go with this. But just looking at the world right now, the factions, between the left and the right,
Yes.
and it's getting further and further and more extreme. We have the extreme right and we have the extreme left, and their existence is all about them being right and the other group being wrong.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where we have to stop. We have to realize that the humanity of the world has to be protected. And the only way to protect humanity is through compassion and love and education and understanding.
Education is so, to teach true education, to teach our true history. We have some very ugly phases of our history. And there's no getting around it. I used to think, oh, let the past be the past. But I have come to really understand you cannot let the past be the past, because we're currently, right now, repeating the past in certain ways. This hatred that's bubbling up, that this fear that something is going to be taken from somebody because they're not this color or they're not that color, or they practice this spiritual way or that religion. It is the same old thing that distracts all of us from recognizing, I love the phrase, that there's only one race, and that's the human race. Now, we are many variations of that, which is what makes it so fantastic. I can't imagine if we were all the same. It would, how boring would that be? There are a lot of things we would not have accomplished if we were all the same. I don't have the mind that created the internet. There are so many things that, because of our differences, that create this beautiful thing. So when you look at our young people right now, in the Jewish community, what would you want to say to them? I know you have grandkids, to encourage and also the support. where what they're stepping into, because this is a totally different time and space that we've never encountered before.
You know, when I moved to San Diego, it was really important for me to live in a diverse community, you know, where my kids would go to schools, you know, from preschool on, where they would have a diverse multicultural community. And what happened is they grew up not knowing about discrimination. You know, they had absolutely no idea. You know, their best friends were African Americans and Hispanics, and who cared, Chinese. And that was beautiful. And my children are doing the same thing with my grandchildren. So I feel blessed that you know, the journey took me on study of world religions. You know, I've been to India, I've been to Japan, I've done Shinto ceremony, I have followed many masters to learn about world's religion, and I'm very grateful that it brought me to Centers for Spiritual Living, where this study of world's religion and the truths and the values that exist in the different religions can be celebrated and loved and analyzed, and we can look at religion, and we could look at scripture, you know, as metaphors and ways for us to live our lives. So I have tried with my children and with my grandchildren to raise them in a place where this doesn't exist in their personal life, and they can't understand, you know, discrimination at any level.
Yes.
But I think it's, you know, there's a wonderful rabbi that I've had the opportunity of doing a weekend workshop with. His name is Rabbi Rami Shapiro. And if you have never heard of him, the Jewish people out there, I recommend that you read him. He's written a book called The Holy Rascal, you know, which he talks about it's important to have infinite curiosity and compassion.
Yes.
And these are principles that I think we need to have, and we need to teach our children to not take anything for granted. You know, not take the word of a gospel for being literal, but as a message or a metaphor to teach you how to be a better person in life, to take everything and be able to turn it in.
And turn it in. I love that. Along with that, I will add that a lot of times we don't realize the biases that we have. And some of it has just been from human consciousness. These biases also, you know, one of the things, I love spiritual, Centers for Spiritual Living as well. And a couple of weeks ago, I shared that, you know, we talk about diversity. But a lot of times, diversity can mean fitting the box that we already have, trying to fit people into that box. And diversity is great, but without inclusion, which means you take the time to understand the different cultures, you explore different spiritualities that can help you broaden your sense of what your relationship with God can or cannot be. You know, some people think that Christmas is that's the pinnacle of that's it. I remember when my brother decided to become Muslim, and he shared with my mother that he was not going to have Santa Claus in his children's life. And for my mom, that was like, what are you doing? You're destroying their childhood. And he said, I am not going to have a white man coming down a chimney. I'm not going to have my kids thinking that that's what is supporting them, that that's what's bringing their toys. And for her, at least for the first year, it was very difficult for my mother, because she didn't see that as a problem, as something that why wouldn't you want? Everybody wants a Santa Claus. And it took her a while to understand that what he was embracing with his children was to understand who his family, who their family is, how these gifts are coming, what it's about, not this one particular thing. So I was really very proud of him. I was shocked because he's my baby brother. But it is, it's one of those things that a couple of weeks ago, you and Viraj did a movie. What was it called? Well, you didn't do a movie. You showed it here.
Showed the movie here. It was...
I forgot to. I'm sorry. It was a great movie, though. It was on one of the
synagogue
that was the shooters came in.
Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, in Pittsburgh. And I remember when we were talking afterwards, the point that it's great for us individually to enlighten and expand, but I really feel that it is each of us, our obligation to now enroll our family, our friends, our co-workers. There are things that we hear that people say. I think, and I'll speak for myself, that I have said that it is time for me to say something. If this does not sit well with me, I can't ignore it anymore. And if that is at the risk of someone being offended, then I have to be able to take that. Because, legislation, definitely some legislation will help, but not with what we're talking about, not the core.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
It's going to take it takes communities, it takes people saying no more of this. So as we get ready to wrap up, and this has been really, really awesome. I love that we've had this opportunity, and hopefully we can do it again. What would you want to say to help people understand hatred of the Jewish community? How that affects you and the world? That's a big question.
It's a big question. As I said, all hatred should be dealt with from the place of ignorance and fear that it comes from. And if we can teach that through education, that there isn't reasons for the bias. I remember when I came to California and bought my first house in San Marcos, my neighbor had never, ever met a Jew before.
Wow.
And he really, he had heard the Jews had horns. And he actually said, "You don't have horns, do you?"
Oh my goodness!
And
are you what?
Very similar to the kind of discrimination that you have felt. So I think that there's, I think that we need to look at our cultural heritage and try and frame. What I've tried to do is I've tried to frame my cultural heritage of being a Jew and learn about the beautiful messages that it teaches that I can then impart to my family and other people. And Hanukkah is a great one. So Hanukkah is not only about giving gifts, but Hanukkah is the story of a miracle.
Yes.
There was the attack on a synagogue and everything was destroyed, and the eternal light that went in the synagogue, there was only oil left for one day. And so members of the community went out into the country, and it took them 7 days to come back with the oil, but that little bit of oil lasted, and the light lasted for the 8 days.
8 days, that's powerful.
And so what is a story of miracle? And as all stories, there's metaphors. And for me, and what I teach my children and my grandchildren is, use this Hanukkah to look at the miracles in your life. Use this Hanukkah to look at life as a miracle and bless it and be in the blessing of the miracle of your life.
That's beautiful. I love that. And I just have to say that you do that in your life, because in your business, you have created a wonderful world where in hospitals across our nation, where, you know, if you got sick and went to a hospital, chances are you would not see or experience your culture in that environment. And you are creating an artistry where this community of artists are to reach all type of cultures and backgrounds and just all different types of people, where you're bringing this into a community where people can be proud to see themselves and recognize through the staff, through paintings, through conferences. Really beautiful work that you do. Really, really beautiful work. And I love that you say that Hanukkah is very special. 8 days was only supposed to last one day. So the miracle, wow, how powerful that is. And each day can be a miracle. I want to thank you for being here, Annette. So beautiful, so awesome. So let's see here. Before we, I told Annette I put this together. Let's see here. Super, super, super awesome. This is our conscious giving time. And I just want to thank all of you for always being a divine light and a support of Universal Spirit Center. Your love and donations help us do so much in the community. I wanted to share this with Annette, and I forgot that I think next year we'll put together a trip to Washington, D.C. to go to the Holocaust Museum, and we could do the Black African American Museum as well. So the things that you do here at Universal Spirit Center, the way that you support us, it affords us to be able to give back to the community. It allows us to share. So as you hold this in your heart, I want you right now, those of you at home, you can zap that QR code and support. You can mail it in, you can text it, because we are all the face of God. We are a divine light that is happening in this space right here and right now. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. You I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. So let me share with you some of the things that we have going on right now. I hold you in my The Grief Support Circle will begin in the beginning of next year, January the 7th. This is fantastic. Go on our webpage, universalspiritcenter.org, for more information. We hope to see you there. We're taking interest for women that may want to have a retreat in May. So if you're here at church, you can go to the Yes Table or online. You can also sign up online. Also, our REP, our Racial Equality Project. There's a video called Speak Up for Inclusion. Please go on our webpage. It's an amazing video that will help enlighten. And our history. I did not know this. I found out that May is the American Heritage Month for the Jewish community. And George W. Bush signed that bill to create that day on April the 20th in 2006. For all of the beautiful years that our Jewish brothers and sisters have contributed to our world, it's important that we know not only about our culture, but that we know about each other, because in that knowledge can help us grow and learn to love each other and all that we give. I thought that was super phenomenal. And I love that this is unfolded a little differently. So, to close, I think one of the most important things that we've learned tonight is that love is the key. With love, we can create a world that will work for all. So, let's see. This is the only song that doesn't want to work. One second here. I really feel that we need to do this song. So one moment.
Do you know what I mean?
really seen. Remember this love. This love is within you, it is within me. And if we decide that love is more important than hate, that love is more important than yesterday, that love is more important than the future, that love right here, right now, can heal, can embrace, and can free us all. Peace and blessings. Have a great night. I'll see you next Wednesday. Toby will be in the house.